Hello everyone, welcome to a new video. Today we have a very special guest, Nicolas Merten. A lot of people from the global English community know you and you need no introduction, but for the people in the Spanish speaking community, welcome, and maybe you want to introduce yourself for us.
Well, thank you, Catalina. It's a pleasure to be here. Big fan of your channel and the work that you've done in this space. For those who may not know me, my name is Nicolas Merten. I'm the founder of DataDash, and I've been active in the cryptocurrency space for the last few years. I've been in financial markets for the last 8 to 9 years. And originally, I had a background investing and trading in stocks and commodities, and took a lot of that experience from those traditional markets into cryptocurrencies. So I try to focus on the longer term perspective of investing and trading. Any kind of position that I usually build is on a multi-month or multi-year basis. So I define myself as a macro trader. And I really try to find where the value is. I try to understand world trends. So it's been a really fun journey over the last few years. And I think cryptocurrency is the cherry on top. It's the really interesting market to be focusing on right now for sure.
Amazing work, Nicolas. Congratulations for you as well, and for the people in the Spanish-speaking community. He has the largest YouTube channel in the crypto space, like the very, very, very largest one. So congratulations for that as well. So the first topic that I would like to cover here is the following, because the last time that we had an economic crisis, a collapse, was in 2008. Exactly when Bitcoin was created. In October of that year, we had Satoshi publishing the white paper of Bitcoin. Bitcoin was way too new for people to realize and perceive the level of decentralization of security of the system that we have today. Now, the scenario now is different. We are entering a recession right now, a global economic crisis. Do you really think people this time in the years, this year or next year, will really get it? Do you think people will understand or look for decentralized alternative for the transfer of monetary value? And let me tell you, the reason why I'm asking you this, Nicolas, is because I'm from Buenos Aires, Argentina, and we live in a constant crisis here. This is one of the best use cases for Bitcoin, and I don't see people taking action to understand money, first of all, and look for decentralized or alternatives, you know. And I'm talking about not the poorest people that may not have access to, let's say, internet, but middle class people. So that is something that I'm constantly thinking. Do we really can expect like humanity this time to take action? What do you think?
Okay, well, you prefaced everything perfectly. The first thing we have to understand is that back in 2000, as you mentioned, Bitcoin didn't have any markets developed around it, so there was no real price discovery. Little to no one knew about Bitcoin, and still to this day, you know, over 12 years later since the inception of the concept of Bitcoin, many people still don't. We have less than 1% global adoption of digital currencies in general, meaning only less than 1% of the world owns digital assets. So that does provide a good narrative in the sense that there's room to grow. But to your question, I think that there is a possible chance that Bitcoin and digital currencies could take off. But there's a few key points to make clear. To your point as well about people, you know, not adopting it, really over the last 10 years, we don't have really much to show in the sense of cryptocurrency adoption. And I think there's a few reasons for this. The first thing that I've come to the conclusion on when I study, especially the markets you're discussing, which are Latin America in this case, such as Argentina, I know very well about the currency crisis that people are going through, the life savings that people have lost. And I can tell you, and I think you would agree with me, Catalina, that it's basically right now, the one thing you can transmit to a lot of people there is that if you could give them an exposure to dollars, then they're listening, they're interested. And I think that we need to understand right now that the innovation of stable coins in the cryptocurrency space, basically crypto tokens that are pegged to a dollar in some sense, or a world currency like the euro, is going to be the first bridge to people to get their money out of either paper money or out of traditional bank accounts. And this is going to give them the ability to have at least dollar exposure, which right now is the world reserve currency. But once you give them a way to start using cryptocurrency tokens or digital money that is outside the control of the banking sector, you now have a bridge to easily plug them into exchanges and platforms where they can then start to get exposure to Bitcoin. I can't talk too much about it right now, but I'm working on a really interesting application that is basically going to make it where you can slowly but surely start building in a position into Bitcoin and other hedging assets that might go up during times of fear. But to your more important question here about people buying Bitcoin, I think that some people will turn to Bitcoin, but it'll only be a matter of whether or not the price is rising. I know it sounds sad because you and I, we care about monetary policy. At the end of the day, people want to buy Bitcoin and assets like gold when prices are going up for the most part. It's not a matter of understanding monetary policy for most people, understanding why these are hedges. It's a matter of seeing, is this doing well during this time period? Are people rushing to this in a time of panic? And I think Bitcoin will slowly but surely build that status over time, because we really
over time.
we haven't seen a recession, for Bitcoin. This is
True.
uncharted territory.
True.
But I think that the key element here with things like the halving event, for example, I think that mixed in with the macro environment of a lot of inflation in the central banking system, negative interest rates across most world currencies, we are going to have a lot of pressure for the three assets that don't print themselves into oblivion and also don't penalize you for holding them. And that's gold, silver, and Bitcoin, plain and simple.
Yeah. No, thank you. Thank you for your answer. I totally agree. And talking about the price for Bitcoin in the short term, you mentioned the halving, and this is something that I also wanted to ask you, because now that we have a global pandemic, a recession that has just started, this was the catalyst for the recession to start, not the general cause of the recession. A lot of people need to hear that. The scenario has changed so much. 2 months ago, people were expecting the price to behave in a certain way right before or right after the halving. What are your thoughts about the behavior, the possible behavior of the price right before or after the halving? In your opinion, it's very hard to predict, but maybe you want to share us.
Absolutely. Well, first, your point, you're 100% right. More people do need to hear that the coronavirus or COVID-19 was not, it was I would say more than anything, it was the first domino to tip over a ton of other issues that have been building up over the last decade and probably over multiple decades that we've just pushed off. But to your point about Bitcoin and the way that it responded, one thing that I really emphasized on my channel is a lot of people lost faith in Bitcoin when they saw how it performed during the stock market sell-off. We had one of the worst sell-offs in stock market history in the sense of the severity and the pace of the sell-off. One of the worst down days since 1987 and back during the Great Depression back in the 20s, late 20s and 30s. So surprisingly enough, Bitcoin declined during this time period. A lot of people thought, oh, because it declined when stocks were selling off, Bitcoin can't be a hedge. But there's actually a lot of explanations as to why this happened. The first thing here that we have to keep in mind is that as of recent, there's been an issue that Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies have struggled with, and that has been the plus token Ponzi scheme. And this was a huge Ponzi scheme that came out of China. It was even bigger than previous ones we've seen in the past, where billions of dollars of Bitcoin, Ethereum, and EOS, some of the more predominant cryptocurrencies, have been stolen from Chinese investors and holders, and basically was instantly sold on the market. And when these scammers in this case are looking to sell the crypto that they basically stole, they're not looking to get it at a certain price, right? They're not trying to hope to sell each Bitcoin at 6,000 or 5,000. They're looking to sell it as quick as possible. They're trying to cash out. And because of that, it basically goes through what's known as the order book, all of the orders on the market, pushing the price down as low as possible. And that's why we had the worst sell-off day for Bitcoin in over 7 years and the worst sell day in history for Ethereum. Now, ever since then, though,
There is a theory that also miners, like the big mining pools, were selling Bitcoin before the halving in order to put these small miners outside of the market for them to receive a higher reward after the halving. Do you think that is the case?
I've heard that theory as well. I think it's interesting. To be
Interesting.
fair, I haven't noticed any specific trends like on chain, and I'm not too in depth in the sense of connections to people in the mining industry.
Hmm.
I think more than anything, what most miners are doing right now, more than anything, is the major thing that a lot of miners, I at least know, try to do is a lot of them either sell instantly and try to operate at a very thin margin, and some of them actually do like to hold their Bitcoin and keep mining operations going. And the way that they can supplement some of the downward pressure of either a declining reward or increasing difficulty in the sense of the hash rate. The way that they can do this is they can actually lend out the Bitcoin that they earn. So they can earn interest in some sense or form on lending markets. So there's a
Right.
lot of lending platforms where they provide the supply side of lending, and that's how a lot of them offset it. But to their theory, I think it's a very interesting and plausible case, Catalina. I don't know, to be fair though.
Yeah, me
There,
neither.
yeah,
It is that it's a
it's an
theory.
interesting mystery. Yeah, it really is. Now, and I'll say that there's two other things that I noticed too. Another problem as well in the crypto space as to why prices went down like they did. And I'm sorry, I'm kind of going on a tangent here about the
Yes.
sell-off, but
Hmm.
but yeah, there's two other reasons. There's a big issue in the sense of crypto markets specifically where we have more liquidity or volume on derivatives platforms that allow you to trade on margin versus spot exchanges. These would be like your Coinbases, your Krakens, or Binances, where people are trading usually either a dollar or Bitcoin pair, and they're actually trading the real underlying asset. The big issue here is that we have a lack of spot market liquidity where real price discovery is made. And if more liquidity is trading on leverage trading platforms where people are getting liquidated and trading off of the price of the spot exchange, it allows a very small amount of Bitcoin to be either bought or sold to lead prices to have very volatile moves. And I think that's what happened here in the mix of the Plus token Ponzi scheme sell off. And along with that, the third issue was obviously COVID-19. A lot of people now are rushing for cash. And as we talked about, I think you know this all too well, Catalina, in most markets across the world, the dollar reigns supreme. And people need dollars during times of short-term panic to cover positions. So every time you're, for example, selling off a share in a company like a stock, or if you're selling a certain commodity or selling off a crypto, you're basically taking a long position on the dollar in this case, or a long position on the euro, depending on what currency pair you're trading. And that's something that a lot of people can't grasp. So we had this huge demand for dollars in the short term with a lacking sense of supply here for dollars. So I think that's what caused the sell-off. And I think it shows that Bitcoin still hasn't been tested as a hedge yet.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but
That is a fantastic summary of many different causes that maybe a lot of people haven't heard before or
Mhm.
not this that complete. And one of the things that I encourage people to do, especially in Latin America, we need to, of course, study the fundamentals to have a long-term perspective and don't get emotional. Like study the reasons why this is happening and also always bouncing between the micro and the macro. The
Mhm.
micro is the study of the fundamentals in order to have perspective how the technology is evolving, because Bitcoin is technology that is constantly evolving. And most people forget that sometimes when things get too crazy or focus on drama or things that's many things that are going on, and then bouncing to the macro factors that could change the current state of the market, but always with you as a trader know this better than anyone else, like don't make emotional decisions right now. So this
Mhm.
is bringing a lot of value. Thank you, Nicolas. So that is the cause. What do you think could happen after the halving? What do you think?
Yeah. So going on that point, kind of talking about the long term, if there's something I've learned over the last few years doing trading and investing, surprisingly, the longer term perspective is not only easier to read, it's more exciting, in my opinion. And this goes into the halving events. So we've really got the perfect asset going through the perfect phase at the perfect time. Bitcoin right now, with its halving event coming in May, is going to provide a massive supply shock to the new production of Bitcoin versus the current demand. And this will start to reflect through price. And I believe that initially as with most halving events in the past, we're going to have a rally in the short term up to around $8,000 or $9,000, and then a sell-off afterwards towards about 6,000 or 7,000. But shortly thereafter, going into the summer and the fall of this year, I think we're inevitably going to be breaking out of a long-term wedge that we've been building up in Bitcoin's price. And we're going to really spark the next rally here, retesting back up towards 20,000 sometime in early 2021. And after that, it's a matter of really allowing the macro environment outside of cryptocurrency markets to set the demand for Bitcoin. When Bitcoin gets back above 20,000, that is going to be the make or break moment that leads us towards our next rally. Because just like how I got interested in Bitcoin yet again when Bitcoin got back up to its all-time highs back in 2016, that was the moment for me as
It
a
was
kind
my
of time.
moment too.
Yeah, right.
But
It's a signal. 100%. You're absolutely right, Caroline. I think that proves something because it showcases like all the skeptics who criticize Bitcoin, and I was one of them in the past because I didn't understand it. I was just like, oh, this market went from $1,000 to $200. Whatever. Good luck coming back. And one day it did. It did eventually get there, and I thought, okay, I need to read the Bitcoin white paper. I need to understand this. And that was the moment where I was hooked. And that is going to be the same exact case this time around. And that's what sparks these kind of not only retail waves of like everyday investors, but it's going to get institutions interested as well. Because when Bitcoin is breaking back to its all-time highs, stocks are going to be down 40, 50%. Commodities across the world are down 30 to 40%. I think the only ones that might be an exception will be gold and silver at that time, but it'll showcase a similarity as Bitcoin serving as a hedge. And after that, it's a matter of outflows of other markets becoming inflows to cryptocurrency markets. So for crypto to go up in the long term, you need dollars, you need money coming into the system, and that's with any market. But I think crypto will easily see that as a when it comes to the multi-trillion-dollar market of U.S. Treasuries and government bonds starting to receive negative yields and penalizing you for owning it. I think that a lot of people are going to look for an alternative in this case that's outside the bands of traditional central banks and outside the bands of having a negative yield of any sort. And again, maybe the average everyday investor won't get that, but institutions will.
Sure.
And for everyday retail investors, it's going to be, is the price going up in a time where everything else is going down?
Looking forward to it. In the meanwhile, we still need to have patience, keep the long-term vision in mind, and try to help as many individuals as we can, right? So Nicolas, last question. The majority of the people who are watching this video are already in the crypto space, are not new. They have been here for a while, and they will still be here, in my opinion. Those are the ones who stayed. What are your suggestions for these people in terms of, okay, yes, look at the whole picture, don't make emotional decisions, study the fundamentals. Do you have any recommendations in terms of topics? I think you mentioned a lot, but 2-3 topics that for people to pay attention during 2020 for them to keep on analyzing this macro perspective, bouncing between the micro and the micro.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a very good point, Canale. So I would say one thing that we actually didn't get to talk about that I think, especially with your most of your audience, I'm assuming being in Latin America, I think that most of your audience would be fascinated with the concept of decentralized finance that's been predominantly on the
DeFi?
Ethereum blockchain. I think DeFi has been, out of anything over the last few years since I got interested in crypto, since back in like 2016 and 2017, I have not been more excited about something since reading the Bitcoin white paper than I am about DeFi. DeFi is basically a summarization of decentralized exchanges, decentralized
This is the welcome door for all the financial institutions to come in also.
100%. Absolutely. It's going to build an entirely new market that I don't think we thought was possible just a couple of years ago. And it's going to make it where you, I, and everyone else across the world have just as much opportunity as the big guys on Wall Street and the banking sector. And people are going to have to compete for your money in this case. Like we've lived in a world where here in the United States, for example, and I know this is the case in Europe, Australia, and in most parts of the world, where there's been a conglomerization, basically a lack of competition in the banking sector, and the people who own something as important as your money, the thing you work 9 to 5 for. And we're going to actually have a flip on that where people are now getting to choose where they put their money, what they do with it. And it's going to basically provide that opportunity to everyone.
I think regarding this topic, maybe we can talk about it in another video because it's so
Yes.
fascinating. And here you need to apply your knowledge regarding the fundamentals, because DeFi is a whole ecosystem and market that has been created, or will be created, but you need to understand the difference between the Ethereum blockchain, the Bitcoin blockchain, DeFi for Bitcoin. Is that even possible? What are side chains? How do they work on a technical level? What are the risks? What are the evolutions in terms of the technology that they need to acquire in order for people to put the trust on the second layer solutions? Fascinating topic to study.
Mm-hmm. It's one
Fascinating
of
topic.
those, as I said, it's been consuming me, and I can barely keep up with it. As someone who works, on the space 24/7, I can barely keep up with what's going on. So it's definitely, as you said, Catalina, it's something you have to spend a lot of time analyzing. Definitely would be a worthy topic for another video and stuff. But yeah, just, I mean, it's a rabbit hole to go down. It's incredible.
That is a great suggestion for people to keep in mind for this year. Nicolas, thank you so much for your time. I don't want to take more time from you today. So thank you, muchas gracias. You told me you wanted to come to Argentina this year, maybe end of the year, maybe 2021.
Absolutely. Yes. I would love to make it out. Muchas gracias to you as well, Catalina. I appreciate it. And, I hope to make it out there sometime in Latin America. I actually went to Latin America at the end of 2019 for the first time. I went to Paraguay, and it was a wonderful trip. I actually flew through Buenos Aires, interestingly enough, and the plane ride alone, like just going in and out of the airport, and one of my connecting flights made me realize I'm like, I have to come here. And I've heard so many wonderful things. So absolutely would love to come back onto the channel. Would love to come get to meet you and a lot of the Latin American community in person. And thank you so much. It was an absolute pleasure, Catalina.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Let's keep in touch. Take care and
Absolutely.
be safe.
You as well. Thank you. Stay indoors.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.